Welcome to the Mike and Alison After Hours podcast with your hosts, mshelah and Alison Haas, talking business with real business owners in the Mid-Atlantic region. Today's episode is sponsored by Advantage Industries. When you need business technology, get Advantage Industries to protect and promote your business. To learn more, go to www.getadvantage.com and schedule your first meeting to see if you qualify for a free network scan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mike and Alison After Hours. I am your host, mshelah, and with me today is my always awesome and always on point co-host, Alison Haas. Alison, how the heck are you today?
Living the dream, Mike. Post PTO on a Thursday. I keep telling people I hope they had a great weekend.
So I have to share this. I am, as you've probably noticed by now, I am a big fan of funny memes on Facebook. And my wife found what I think is the funniest meme. And it's one of those things that it probably shouldn't strike me as funny as it does, but I laugh every time I look at it. And it's a little meme. It says, "Hey, you doing okay? You taking care of yourself?" And the picture is Beetlejuice, and he's going. And I feel like that's the world swirling around us right now. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what day it is, and
yeah.
My God, what am I
don't even know what you mean
now?
by asking that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Here.
It's a phenomenal picture, and it cracks me up all the time. So what's been going on cool with you? It hasn't been all that long since we recorded the last episode. Now that we've got our poop together, but what's going on in your world?
Well, like I said, I took a couple days PTO, which I think is actually a cool topic as salespeople, because I know me personally, it has taken years to allow myself to take PTO, which is paid time off, which means I don't have to necessarily earn it in order to, as you were just saying, take care of myself, right? I mean, I'm not commuting right now. Most people probably aren't. So you'd think I'd be refreshed or rejuvenated. I'm at home. Oh no, like Zoom and virtual selling has a whole nother taxing element to it that I frankly wasn't prepared for, right? Last fall I sold remotely because I had a broken leg, so I couldn't drive, but it was a godsend because I was distracted from the fact that I couldn't walk, right? So like, fine. But now I am a doer, as I know you are, and most of us salespeople, and I have no problem just going. And while I have good work boundaries around my hours, Zoom has enabled me to just keep going without stopping. And so, I took a couple days just to get off the screen, right? I mean, and my year to date is not where I had envisioned it pre-COVID, as I'm sure most of us would say. And in the past, I would have not allowed myself to take that time off because I wasn't where I thought I needed to be. Well, I'm not going to forecast that I'm not going to be where I want to be by December 31st at 11:59 p.m. But there's a chance that I'm not going to make up my deficit in that amount of time. And so then I would have been out all this time and exhausted and fried, and for what, right? So it's I think as salespeople, we have to remember that if we don't refill our own cup, we're worth nothing. Like, we've got to take care of ourselves personally. And it took me half of the day to like empty my inbox and get to tend to the fires that apparently the water was out yesterday without me. But it's now I can do my job better, and then I want to do my job better, right?
Yeah, I think, and this is something that I experienced early on in my career, and I'm guessing you did too. But that mentality of, well, if you're not your number on the last day of the month, you can't take that day off. What the hell sense does that make? And the list of dumb things, that's right at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Nothing you do at 4 o'clock on the last day of the month is going to now, if you're in the middle of working on something, you're submitting an order, you're getting your T's and that's different.
Right.
But this whole notion of the Hail Mary at the last minute and frankly, what the hell's the difference between the last day of the month and the first day of next month? It's such an artificial due date, but it's how salespeople live.
Yep.
We really are indoctrinated to that. It's drummed into your head over and over and over, and I find it numbing. But yeah, you've got to take some time to re-energize yourself. And my big week is normally around the Christmas holiday. That week between Christmas and New Year's, precious little gets done in the sales world.
Sure.
And I stay aware of what's going on. If I have a client or two that I know I'm wrapping up something, but prospecting that week is foolish.
Right. You're making me remember, like, back in my car sales days, literally they told us you go from hero to zero, right? On the 30th or 31st to the 1st. And it's like, granted, I got paid differently then. Now thankfully I build, right? So like I don't go from hero to zero in my bank account while, and it's our year to date more than anything. And while no one wants to have to shove it all together at the end, no one can control what's happening around us. So, I talked to a peer this morning and it was like, if I don't get where I want, it's not for lack of effort or try, like it just, and so, you're a family man, right? We had a phenomenal episode recently aired about, our families and what's important to us. And that's the stuff we also have to dig into and be like, I am more than my job, right? And so while this is a business podcast, we're all still humans, right? So I think that's a really real thing too.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And this has probably disqualified me from more job opportunities than not. But anytime I've been in the interview chair, I've always said, I work to live. I don't live to work. Now, you will find that I am one of the hardest workers 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Yep.
But don't expect me outside of that scope, because I can very competently do my job 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And I've always marveled at salespeople like, I was up until midnight working on an RFP. I'm like,
why? What else do you have nothing else to do? Yeah, nope. You will never hear me say that ever.
How do you not get that done during work hours? And I've always heard things like, oh, well, you don't want to impact your selling hours. And I'm like, you know what? And I'm not saying this to tell you how awesome I am. I'm just stating that from the beginning of my career in sales, I've pretty consistently been what I call a lifter instead of a leaner. Meaning, if you look at an office, whether you have 5 or 500 salespeople, I'm always towards the top of the list. Mm-hmm. I'm not always the best, but I'm always towards the top of the list.
Yeah.
And I would look at all these people around me doing crazy crap, like working on RFPs at midnight. And I'm like, all right, if it makes you feel better, sure. But you know what? My managers have always known that I was the guy that they could count on.
Yes.
So I find that stuff fascinating. So, hey, we're going to start a new segment this week, right?
We are. It'll be fun.
Yeah, we thought it would be cool for our audience to start to get some sense of the industries that Alison and I represent. So I came up with this idea of doing a top 5. And the original idea was Alison would share her top 5 and I would share my top 5. And we quickly figured out that's just going to take way too much time.
Yep.
So what we're going to start with today is Alison, being the overachiever that she is, gave me her top 9. But we're going to work on the first 5. And this is industry terms for her industry, which is really cool. And what I found really fascinating is how many of these actually translate to my industry as well, IT, technology. So we're going to go through that. And the first one is EPLI, Employment Practices Liability Insurance. Now, I have a vague idea what insurance is. I have lots of insurance. I have car insurance. I have auto insurance, all kinds of insurance. But this is a very specific insurance, and I'm guessing you had it kick off your list for a really specific reason. So tell us about EPLI.
Yeah, so first, HR is the service industry that we're discussing here, human resources. which I know is a hot topic for most people. You either hear that acronym and you think, no, thank you, or you think, oh my God, like that is the bane of my existence because it's all about people, right? And so EPLI, Employment Practices Liability Insurance, is the only HR related insurance that's going to protect you against HR related claims, fines, things of that nature. So when I ask my prospects, do you have this policy? Most have no idea what I'm talking about. Some think they do, and then even fewer are like, yes. So oftentimes it is bundled in the GL somewhere. More often it is written in a way that you have a $5,000 deductible and may have similar coverage, which if you do the math isn't going to get you very far. And so it is not cheap, but it is one of those, right, value ads, like you don't get insurance after something happens. You want it previously. And in today's world of almost 2021, people sue for everything, right? So we'll get into our next topic here, but for us, HR is all about protecting the business. What are you doing to protect your business? And this is just one of those bolts. You get an EPLI policy with us. But even if you don't, this is something I always encourage business owners to look into and get to protect themselves, because you can document everything correctly. You can treat someone like a king or a queen. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter sometimes, right? So this is truly going to protect you, discriminatory things, sexual harassment, EEOC related things. But you want this to be available for you to kick in should you need it.
Yeah, and the topic of insurance in general is really important to your industry as well as mine. And I've mentioned this before, I think, but in my world, there is a policy called cybersecurity insurance. And one of the things that I have to educate almost every single customer that I talk to is it's not an either or, it's and both. Yeah. That yes, you need my company to be doing specific things for you, but you really should have this policy, because when things go wrong, not if, you're going to need both of them. And if they're not in alignment, if you haven't had an organization like mine vet the requirements of your cybersecurity insurance policy, you're going to be stuck, is the short answer. And then that relates back to ultimately, the HR organizations. Your ultimate goal is to protect the company, to protect the entity, look out for its best interest, not unlike an attorney, just a specific aspect of the legal world that every business has to go forward through.
Yep.
All right, good stuff. See, it's amazing how much synergy there is between the two. So you talked about compliance and due diligence, and wow, I could talk about this forever, but I can't. I'm looking forward to hearing the HR side of compliance and due diligence.
Yeah, so I'm going to separate them, even though they're merged together for a reason. But compliance, are you following the rules, right? And so in every state, sometimes within the state, from township to township, think California, Washington, there are different rules around employment, around PTO, paid time off, around leave, around healthcare benefits. Like, for example, Maryland, under 51 full-time employees, you cannot use a vendor that's a professional employer organization for healthcare. So you cannot come to us for medical benefits until you are a certain size, right? Think at 50, ACA kicks in and those rules. Think of part-time versus full-time, right? Keeping track of time. So when a part-timer keep fluxing into the full-time, well, guess what? You need to offer him or her benefits. That's a rule, right? Think COVID and all of the written safety programs that are now in place and all of the different regulations raining down on your office.
I don't want to. That would make my head hurt.
Yeah. So again, compliance, are you following the rules? And so for the little guys, right? Little is relative. Some people consider themselves a small business at 500 employees. I mean, like 5 employees to 30 employees. Mm-hmm. You may think, okay, well, how important am I, right? I can just fly under the radar. Well, again, we go back to the first term and protecting your business, right? It's not if, it's when, as you already said so brilliantly. And let's protect your business from the start so that you're not rolling down the hill backward, right? On fire when it's too late, right? When somebody's noticed or an employee notices for you, God forbid, right? And so this compliance ties in handbooks, right? Compliance ties in an appropriate vendor to track your time, calculate your taxes, pay the accordances. So that's compliance. Are you following the rules? And, there are things arguably that you could probably quote get away with, but from my perspective, it's just easier to do it right the first time and then continue to do it right. So that when you do grow, if that is your intention by employee count, you don't have to start scrambling and redoing and undoing, right? Because that's a part of your culture too. And people will respect that.
Yeah. And again, when it comes to compliance, I mean, half of my business is compliance. We call it cybersecurity / compliance. And I'm guessing the numbers are not terribly different for your industry, but we're finding over 70% of small to medium business owners have never had a voluntary compliance audit. And I have to use the word voluntary because we all have met those business owners that have gotten the Mr. Smith, yep. I need to speak with you.
Yep.
We have found this irregularity and you're at fault.
Yep.
And it's astounding to me. And you said it perfectly. At a bare minimum, your business resides in a state. And that state has laws. And your business has to follow those laws. And anytime I hear a company say, well, I'm too small, I just want to cringe. I say, well, are you too small to make money? No? Okay. Then you're not too small.
Right.
Because that's ultimately why companies are started, as it's a vision of the owner or the president or the founder that, hey, this is how I'm going to make my dent in the universe, to quote Steve Jobs. This is how I'm going to make a living. And if you don't have those compliance pieces in place, you're asking for trouble. It's sooner or later, it's going to punch you in the face. And if you don't have that plan, you're not going to be able to respond appropriately. And things that would have taken hours will now take days. And things that would have taken days will now take weeks. And things that would have taken weeks will now take months. And how long can your business survive without revenue like that? So,
well, speaking of revenue, if you say, you don't pay attention to the rules around healthcare and part-time versus full-time, and you just, put this offering together for employees because you're desperate to hire talent, right? Well, one day you're going to realize, one, it's unaffordable to continue the practice that you've put into place. And now you have people that feel entitled, right, and rightfully so, to the way that they've been treated and the package that you're offering them, when one day someone's going to tell you, hey, you're not actually allowed to give them that or do that for them. Or you have new hires come in, and then what? They get treated differently. So that goes back to culture, right? And it's an organizational issue at that point. So yeah, we could talk about compliance all day long. The due diligence piece is, making sure that you're up to date with all the laws and the regulations. And this specifically, I was talking about mergers and acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a due diligence process there when you're vetting a business to either own or merge or take over. This could also be like you're leaving a business to someone, right? You're leaving a legacy to one of your children. And so the evaluation and monetary worth of the business has a lot to do with this stuff, right? Your business is not just worth what you think it's worth because you built it. I'm sorry, right? And I know, and as a former business owner and a daughter of business owners, I feel like I can say that, right? And be like, I'm sorry, but just because you think it's worth X doesn't mean that it is. And all of your hard efforts, blood, sweat, and tears, which I know, and I don't say that lightly, go into building a business. If you're not doing all these other things right so that we remove you, insert new person,
it is worth less
to be able to run, right? And it needs to be able to continue running without you. And if it can't, chances are something's off with the compliance and the due diligence aspect. And so in the M&A world, this really helps keep your multipliers up, because from an HR perspective, you're taking over, especially larger organizations, a group of people, right? So how are those groups of people governed, essentially, and how are they treated, and are all the rules being followed? And that only makes your business worth more money at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the compliance world for medical, the term is HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
And in the HIPAA community, they came up with taking reasonable and appropriate action. And I think that's what diligence is, right? It's taking reasonable and appropriate action. But my goodness, it is already guest time.
Good, because I have to plug in my computer as I watch it drain. So I'm going to disappear.
We didn't even get 5 questions in. That's how interesting this stuff is. So more to come from Alison next week in her top 5. But I am going to bring in our guest today. His name is Todd Sachs. He is the president and owner of Sachs Realty. He is a serial entrepreneur, and his company is based right in the heart of Howard County in Columbia, Maryland. So let's bring him in.
Hopefully my computer won't freeze his face this time, like our last guest.
Hey, Todd, go ahead and take yourself off of mute, but you are on After Hours with Mike and Alison. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, Alison, how are you? Glad to be here.
Hi, Todd. Great to meet you virtually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, Todd, I just gave a little blurb intro for you. I was telling people that you are the president, founder of Sachs Realty. You're a serial entrepreneur. But the one thing that I left out is that you are what I will call an avid podcaster. You've had your podcast now up for over 2 years, and you and I were doing a little green room stuff earlier this week, and you were doing all kinds of cool stuff with social media live, and you guys, he literally built a studio in his office. I was a guest on Todd's show a couple years ago, right when he was getting it off the ground. And just, this is a man who takes things seriously. So, Alison and I were just talking about due diligence. Todd has due diligence, and he is candid enough to say that he has failed in the past, but he has been successful far more than he has failed. And he was telling me what a white knuckle experience it is to run and drive and market a successful podcast. And oh, by the way, Sachs Realty is a real estate company, and he's really good at that too. So, Todd, welcome to the show. So excited to have you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm really honored to be on your show.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So there are a couple segments we're going to do today. I'm going to take you through what is called the who, what, where, when, why, how. And that's really going to be your opportunity to showcase your company and what you do and why you do it. You can even bring up your top 5 if you're so inclined. And then Alison is going to walk you through in the second half some great questions around leadership and team building, which I know you are a fellow book nerd like me. You know quite a bit about what it takes to become a great leader and what it takes to build a great team. I've gotten to work with a couple of your team members, and I know that Todd is very diligent when it comes to those things. So let's get this party started, as the saying goes. So the who, what, where, when, why, how is free form. Why don't we begin with who? Who is Todd Sachs?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur since 1989. So I was a very young guy, graduated high school, and was headed to, actually was about to enlist in the Marine Corps. And my grandmother, who I lived with when I was a kid growing up, she developed cancer, and I put that on hold to sort of work and help her, and kind of over the next couple of years, it was a really tough time, and she ended up passing on. And I was taking classes at a community college, and had already started construction and a landscape business, and to pay the bills, and while I was putting myself through college and taking care of my grandmother. And then I dropped out of school. I was in business law, and we were talking about things like what an LLC and what the different types of corporations, whether it was a C corp or a subchapter S corporation. And I had already established a C corp, had started a business, had employees out in the field. And I remember I left for lunch, honest truth. I mean, I left for lunch in class and just never went back. And, it's kind of crazy. I mean, life, had I enlisted in the Marine Corps like I was pushed to do, I come from a military family, and, or stayed in college, I mean, things might have been quite different. I was always a blue collar guy. So I started, swinging a hammer and digging holes, and, built a business around that. And then as things progressed, I mean, I was a contractor. NV Homes was one of my big clients. And back in the early 90s, they were going financially insolvent. I had a bunch of employees and really had my first taste of adversity when I couldn't pay my bills. And, we fought through it. I got married at a very young age and had children early on. And, there were some tough times. There were definitely some struggles. Fortunately, I'm a fighter, kept going and fighting through it. And, I really liked residential housing. I started building houses and renovating houses, and did that for quite some time, really from, I guess, 1997 to 2005. We had a great career doing that. And then, of course, we went through another big crash of the housing bust. Everybody knows it as the collapse of 2008. Again, realigned, readjusted, sort of started Sachs Realty. I was with Long & Foster for a bunch of years, and then Berkshire Hathaway for about 3 years. At that point, I built a team of agents. I was focusing a lot on commercial real estate. And in 2007, to kind of fast forward, sort of established what I would consider the epitome of my career, and that's the ability to teach everything that I've learned over the last 30 years being in construction and housing to other people. And so I started Sachs Realty in 2017, and here we are. So today, in the middle of a pandemic, and once again, learning how to navigate through the various storms and try and come out ahead. And that is what it's all about, whether you're self-employed or not.
And Todd, I want to stress to the audience that Sachs Realty is literally your company. So you're not a subdivision of Remax or Long & Foster or any of those, which is what a lot of people do. There's some big name real estate realtors out there, but they all fall under a shield. And I mean, talk about walking out to the edge of the branch where things aren't exactly safe. But you did that, and you guys, by all accounts, you're holding your own in a tough market.
We are, fortunately. I've never really been one to sort of go with the flow, or I've always challenged what is going on right now, like how business is being conducted, or what the market is currently doing. And I always try and look ahead. And I think the biggest thing was when I was with the larger brands was it was very hard. I sort of relate it to a big ship. So when you're part of that big ship, there are a lot of tiers to the ship, and then the captain's sort of like at the top. And when you have these great ideas, or you want to try and do things different, maybe you're seeing something that isn't being seen at that high level, and it's really tough to turn that ship, or to even really get them to pay attention to what you're doing. So I knew that with what my plans were and how I wanted to utilize technology and, social media, you talk about a podcast, I wanted to make sure that the only restrictions were what, I gave myself, and that, we could be that speedboat, if you will, that we could turn very quickly and navigate around that big ship and just kind of, make our own way. And so it has been challenging in a lot of ways because we don't have that big structure, that a big ship has. So, the challenges that we've had to overcome, or I've had to overcome, is really, implementing the systems that you're not privy to, and sort of learning, as we go along.
Yeah, and if I had to use a word to describe you, Todd, the word student comes to mind. You're somebody that believes in not only educating yourself, but educating your team members. And I think that's what your podcast is all about. It's really about teaching others and learning for yourself and getting better. Would you just mind share a minute on, your thoughts on the student mentality?
I think that you have to be a good scholar in what it is that, you're doing. I mean, you have to, I'll say that, I haven't always been academic. So, I mean, going back to school, I mean, I've always, I was never really the academic one, but I was very wise. And I knew what I had to do to win. And, I was always an athlete, very athletic. And, but I know that you have to learn, you have to train, you have to learn, you have to know what your opponent's doing, you have to understand, what you need to do to win in that game or that arena. And so I've always, utilized my resources. But with that being said, I've always challenged what I'm being told, or, what I'm reading or what I'm learning, because that's only their opinion. Books, I mean, a lot of books behind me. I do read a lot of books. But again, that's their success. And that's the way that they did it in a snapshot of time. So things are different. Some fundamentals don't change, but a lot does change. So I sort of take what has been done or what is being done and try and figure out what's missing. And that's a discipline. That's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of hours. It takes a commitment that a lot of times goes far beyond what the average person is willing to do. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that, because it's not just about entrepreneurship or ownership. It's just about being successful at your job or your life. And everybody's level of success is personal to them. It's not my job to say whether, they're successful or not. They have to feel that they're reaching that level of success that they desire. But yes, certainly, just not being afraid to learn.
So the last time I checked, you have physical offices in Columbia, Maryland, and in the Cockeysville / Hunt Valley area of Maryland, depending on who you ask.
I say Cockeysville. Some people, they don't like that word, so they say Hollywood. Cockeysville, guys. I hate to tell you, but I guess the funniest thing is when people ask you to spell it,
Oh, gosh.
So,
I'm from up that way. So I live in Columbia now, but I'm from northern Baltimore County. So I'm well versed.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So tell us about your range, because, I mean, you realtors are kind of a funny thing. They tend to be very regional, but there's some rules around that, right? There's some laws, there's some standards around where you can and cannot sell. To talk to us a little bit about your client and your audience and your geography, as it were.
Yeah, so we're a growing company. We're very slow in our growth with bringing people on. I think it's very important that you have the right people. But my approach is very strategic, and we really target markets. So there's 9 main markets that we operate in Maryland, though we're licensed to go anywhere in Maryland. But our big focus is once we get out of our 9 main markets, then we refer the business out at that point. So I think that with real estate, and it's changing. I mean, we just had a podcast the other night about real estate without agents. If we could be replaced, would that be good or bad for the consumer? And there's a lot of talk about that, because they're big disruptors that are really going after everybody's business. It's automation. And but we really believe that a real estate professional should be an expert in the area that they cover. And I think that that's one of the main values that we offer in this business is because when somebody, and we do both commercial and residential, but we'll just, for a minute talk about the residential aspect. They're really buying a lifestyle. They're buying, more than just a home to live. It's about where, they're going to shop and have fun, and, schools and transportation, and everybody's needs are different. And when you're helping that client, you need to know the area. So many people in this business take on clients in areas that they don't have a clue of what's going on in the area, and that can be very harmful to a buyer.
Wow, we should book you for another show just to talk about the black hole that commercial real estate has become in this COVID environment. And I have deep sympathy for people that specialize in commercial realty, because like the restaurant industry, like the entertainment industry, they had their livelihoods literally ripped out from underneath their feet. At least you're fortunate to have that balance, because residential is booming right now, which makes no sense to me. But again, we could probably do another show just on why residential is so hot right now. But yeah, thank you so much. Great stuff. So before we transition over to Alison and her question set, I like to be a little funky, and I like to ask right in the middle of the show. So if somebody wants to work with Todd or one of your amazing people at Sachs Realty, what are the best ways to get more information and get in contact with you?
And just reach out, send me an email. I mean, as you said, we have a YouTube channel. You can check out Sachs Realty's YouTube channel. That will let you know more about who we are and what we do. You had mentioned, Mike, about, casting, out that net. As far as podcasting, I believe that if you're providing a service, you have to actually provide more value, than maybe what you're getting back, right? We have to give in order to get back. So we're really big, proponents of doing that. So we give a lot of information for free, and, try and educate. And high tides, all ships rise. So, really our podcast is geared towards consumers, but also agents. We give a lot of great information for that agent that really wants to excel in this business. So absolutely, reach out to me anytime. We'll be glad to have a conversation.
And make sure that I've got this right. It is www.sachsrealty.com.
That's correct. Yep, Sachs, S-A-C-H-S. Yep, Sachs Realty, and maybe you can publish some links. But yeah, absolutely.
And I will call you highly competent when it comes to the social media scene, because I know you're on LinkedIn, and I know you're on Facebook, and I know you're on Twitter, and I know you're on Instagram. Hell, you're probably even on Pinterest.
I think I have an account. Well, Mike, keep in mind, man, I'm over 50. So this stuff is not second nature to me. So there's, for anyone listening that, really wasn't born with a digital device in their hand, there is hope for you. If I can do it, you can do it. Definitely.
Phenomenal. All right, Alison, take it away. I'm really looking forward to your segment with Todd.
Thank you. But Todd, you're a student, right? So I think that it makes perfect sense that social media is in your wheelhouse now, right? So we already talked about that. And I'm glad that we talked a little bit about your podcast, because I was going to veer off topic for just a moment, because I really obviously am interested in podcasts, but I also wanted to hear more about that. So thank you. Cool story. I started my own business also right out of college. I finished just because I didn't think there was an option not to, which is the irony is that my brother never went to college. So I don't know where I got that idea, but it never occurred to me that I couldn't go or shouldn't go. And I thought it was a had to thing. But anyway, this is not about me. This is about you. So did you always envision yourself being a business owner, or was it one of those things that you had to take care of your family and keep a roof over your head, and that's just what happened?
Yeah, Alison, let me just backtrack 1 second. When we're talking about, formal education, I'm all about, getting that formal education. I think, I have 2 children, and they both went to college. One, just finished up her master's. And,
congratulations.
I thank you. And I think it is very important, especially in today's world. I mean, where, it's not just a matter of, getting the college education to get a job. It's even more of what kind of experience do you have. So I think it is important, formal education. I don't think that, the best path, though there are a lot of successful people that have not gone to college and really created, great lives for many people, their families and their employees and things like that. But it's not necessarily the easiest way to go. I mean, it's, there's something to say about continuing past, grade school and getting that more formal education. But as far as, I had no idea that I would start my own business. I mean, things went, I came from, my father was a police officer, he was in the Army, a family of, military background. And I always thought that would actually be the path that I would take. I was fit, I was athletic when I was a kid. And, it's probably one of the, if people ask me if I have any regrets, it's probably one of the biggest regrets that I have is that I didn't wear a uniform. I'm very respectful to the ones that have. But I had no idea. It sort of just happened. Where does a strong guy, get a job, without an education? I didn't have a whole lot of, I guess, choices. I did some crazy things that, people would think that they're crazy. I mean, I sold encyclopedias door to door when I was 18 years old. And I mean, a lot of people say, what the heck's an encyclopedia? But you want to talk about a job that sucks. That sucked. But I was actually pretty good at it because I guess I was, ignorant enough to know that it's not a bad thing to knock on somebody's door. I mean, it wasn't good back then either, believe me. I mean, no one really likes that. They say Jehovah's Witness, knock on doors, and, you hide from them. Well, believe me, you were hiding from the encyclopedia guy too. But I managed to make a job out of it. And I guess through not being afraid to knock on doors and knowing that I had some skill set with construction and was strong, it just made sense. So I just started working through the neighborhood. One thing led to the next, and I actually got busy. And then, I needed employees. And so it sort of progressed. But no, if you would have asked me when I was 17, 18 years old, starting my own business would never have been a conversation.
I appreciate that. Do you think part of like your boots on the ground first and paving the way has helped you become a great leader? What attributes do you think amount to being a great leader?
Yeah, I think
By the
it's
way,
made me.
We're calling you a great leader. You're not saying that yourself. So we're telling you you're a great leader.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that I'm a difficult leader. I don't think I'm the easiest to be around, and I have this conversation with my people, and they do stick around. But I think first and foremost, to be a great leader, you have to be your biggest critic, and I think that that is tough. I think that leadership is not for everybody. There's that joke that some people get up and make things happen. Some people get up and watch things happen, and then some people get up and wonder what happened. It's fun to joke about that, but the bottom line, I wouldn't gauge somebody's success on whether they're a leader or not, because it takes the leader, and then it takes a lot of team to make it work. And they say there's no I in team, and it's true. But I think that to be a good leader, you have to be very critical on yourself, because if you're not setting that example, if you're demanding high expectations from your people, you have to demand that of yourself. And so I work the hardest. I beat myself up the most, and and I think that that makes a good leader if you can handle it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great segue into what makes a great team.
I think a great team is, first, a leader that encourages. I think that to make a great team, you have to have a plan. So I think it all starts with the leadership, because you can have great team members that will leave you looking for that leadership that encourages. So, when you look at, I was raised, so my parents split up when I was a baby, and, my mom moved back home with my grandparents, and they weren't prepared to have a baby in the house. And my grandfather, who had already retired, went back to work a full-time job so that he could afford to have a baby in the house. And, so he was like my dad, and he was a cool guy. I attribute a lot of who I am to him. But the way things were back then was fear-based leadership. So, there was a different type of leadership where, you worked somewhere till you retired and you had pension. That doesn't really exist a lot now. Well, fear leadership certainly doesn't exist at all, because number one, it's not right. And number two, you're not maximizing your team's ability or your company's ability. So, I think that a good team is someone, a team are filled with people that care, that want leadership, but want the platform or the ability to be heard, and that they can use their own innovation and expertise to help and to matter and to be a big part of that growth. And then you have to have the leadership that will allow the reward. So I think, it starts with leadership, and then I think that the team has to be held accountable. So again, back to leadership, because they want that. And they want to know that, average isn't enough, that if you're going to win in today's market. And I want to tell you about one of my favorite books at the end here. I know, Mike, that was one of your final thoughts. But business is not easy. Right. So, even for the big companies, it doesn't matter. You have a company or a business that's been in for, decades or a century or more, and you hear of them closing their doors. And so nothing is ever given. It's always, what are you doing right now? And I've been reminded that more than once. It's what you do for me today. It's not what you did for me yesterday or last week. So I think having the right team that understands that it's not personal, but in order for us to continue to win and have opportunity and growth, they have to get that.
Absolutely. And so has this year affected you in a way that, tell us about that, right? Commercial real estate, as Mike already alluded to, I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, well, so commercial real estate, like Mike said, it could be its podcast in itself. I will say, guys, things are changing tremendously. There's going to be a lot of, sort of wreckage that is left behind from this year. And it's not just, I want everybody to understand, it is not from the pandemic. We have been trending away from what was called in commercial spaces head down desk space, where the average employee needed 150 square feet of space for an office. We have been going away from that for quite some time. Companies have been pushing to subcontracting, using subcontractors for quite some time. What the pandemic has done is really, it has escalated it, and it has forced the embracing of those changes that were coming anyway. So it's just shown the businesses that they don't need the office space that they were being told that they need, and that they can have productivity even more so from their people at home, with their staff using their own electricity and working pretty much all the time, because now when you're working at home, you really don't know when to shut it off. So they're getting more from their people. So, but yeah, I think that it's escalated, and we're going to see certainly people that have been serving commercial real estate, they need to change very quickly. These buildings will be repurposed, and I feel that a lot of them will turn into residential use.
So with that in mind, what's your strategy going forward from a growth perspective?
So our growth is really to work on our 9 primary markets here in Maryland, but really utilizing our podcast and our, outreach with providing not just Maryland with great advice with real estate, but to be a conduit for people needing, agents all across the country for their real estate needs, whether it's residential, commercial, and being able to connect them through our preferred broker network, which is something that we're focusing on, a lot, really building that. And we're already seeing transactions from referrals that we've been given out in various states. And that's happening very quickly.
That's great. That's great. So I know you mentioned some hiccups along the way. So I'd love to focus on a best moment in business, if you could name just one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the best moment in business happens all the time. And for me, the best moment in business is when I recommit to continue.
I love that.
I think that, for me, being at my age and starting a new business 3 years ago, the biggest thing was asking myself, what the heck am I doing? I mean, my kids said to me, both of my kids said, Dad, you're working harder than you ever have. Most people your age are like unwinding and selling their house and downsizing and thinking about the beach, and you're like just getting started. So I think the biggest moments for me is when, I recommit to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And when I realize that I'm right where I should be, that is the biggest moment for me. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's the honest to God's truth.
Selfishly, I needed to hear that today, Todd. So thank you. That's all I'm going to say. I really appreciate hearing that. It's true with all the things that are happening in the world, right? We're all affected. We're all experiencing it differently while simultaneously. So I love that so much. I think, Mike, with your permission, we just jump into the book part, because I completely agree. That was a headliner.
Total book nerd, book nerd word 1, book nerd 2, and we can add Todd to the book nerd list. So yeah, please tell us.
All right, so I have it next to me. All right, but it's kind of like I don't know where we can pull it into play. You can't see it. Maybe you can. I have a bad habit of losing my covers. Okay, so forgive me. This had a really attractive cover. But I want to tell you guys, this book is 20 years old, and it's still one of my favorites.
Okay.
And I've read it several times. And the name of the book is It's Not the Big That Eat the Small, It's the Fast That Eat the Slow. And I want to tell you why. And I think, remember when I was saying that you always challenge what it is that people tell you is the way it is, because most of the time it isn't, right? That's not what defines you and makes you successful with what it is that you're doing. And 2 things in life. We've been taught that money is hard to make. And that's a lie. It's a lie. I've proven it. I think if you're stingy with your money, you won't have it. I think there's a couple laws of the land that really govern us as a human race. And I think that if you believe what you hear and you think that money's hard to make, then it will be hard to make. If you focus on a good service and you're true to it and it helps people and you focus on helping people, the money will be the byproduct and it will always be there. I promise you it will. But the biggest thing is that when I was growing up in business, or through the last 30 years, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, you have to crawl before you walk. And that's a lie. It's even more so a lie today, because if you're crawling, you're getting run over. So when this says it's not the big that eats the small, it's the fast that eat the slow, guys, you have to know where it is you're going, what it is that you want to do, where it is you're going, and you have to pick up the lowest lying fruit. And we spend so much time in business doing everything that doesn't matter because we don't want to make the call. We don't want to prospect. We don't want to go after it. But the low-lying fruit means money. and it's the bank account that you build in order to do anything else. And we have a tendency to try and overthink things, analysis paralysis, that prevents us from grabbing the low-lying fruit and doing the most important things first. If you keep in mind that you have to grow the fastest you can, and what that means is you need sales. So when you focus your plan and you're gearing your day, that becomes number one. If you do that and you put the money in the bank, everything else will fall in place because you will be able to afford to buy it. You know, you can gain that expertise that you don't have by paying someone else to do it, but you got to be good at getting up and running quickly and putting those checks in the bank. This book is great for that. So can't encourage you enough to check it out.
Love it. Thank you. You were fantastic. I'm all pumped up now and it's 5 o'clock. So I'm like, I need this to be 7 a.m. instead, but that was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you
I'm
guys.
adding that one to the book list, Todd. Absolutely. And
yeah, I wrote it down.
You hit on several key items there, and I want to key in on a few of them just before we wrap up today. But you know, when you and I were kids, and I knew we were about the same age. I didn't realize you're basically like a year or two older than me. There was this thought, well, you have to go to college, and you got to get a degree because that'll get you a good job, and yeah. Not that you shouldn't go to college, like you said, because education is so fundamental. But I literally was having this conversation with my daughter this morning via text message. She's going to a fabulous college right now. She's a graphic design major. And two of her teachers said, I really want you to shift your focus a little. You're incredibly talented and you'd be really well in this subset of the major. And she's saying to my wife and I, what should I do? We said, if you want to do it, you should do it. And she says, well, I feel like I'm wasting my intelligence. And we're like, absolutely not. If this is something you care about, it's something that you love doing. And Todd, you kind of alluded to this. The money will come because if you're really passionate about something, you really put everything behind it, the money becomes secondary. And if there's one thing that I could go back to my 18-year-old self and tell him that, it'd be like, stop listening to all these knuckleheads. You know, what do you want to do? Go do that. Get really good at that. Go do that because the world will value you more and they will pay you more. So just absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I knew you'd be a great interview. I wasn't a doubt in my mind. And you delivered the good, Todd Sachs. So
you did. I wrote so many Post-its. They're all going up on my computer. I'm ready to go make $1 billion tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank
Todd
you.
Sachs, president of Sachs Realty and podcast guru and serial entrepreneur. Thank you so much for being on another wonderful episode of Mike and Alison After Hours. And to our audience, thank you for listening today. And remember, people helping people, it is powerful stuff. Make it a great day.
God bless you guys. Thank you.
I
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Mike and Alison After Hours. Tune in next time for another great business owner sharing valuable industry ideas. Want to be a guest on our show? Contact us at answers@getadvantage.com.